Hey, what's up, everybody? Once again, a None of Your Business short. We got a couple great interviews that are being queued up. And while we are in production on those, thought we would drop you guys another None of Your Business short. A lot of people write in and say that they like these shorts because they're little bite-sized nuggets of what's going on and what you can do with your business to sort of be adapting. And today, I thought that we would talk about leaving the old behind in order to pursue the new. Sort of this idea that you have to let go of one branch in order to swing for the next branch. And I see that holding so many people back. You know, we're going through a time where a lot of people would argue that we're in a financial crisis.
Sure.
So during a financial crisis, what happens is we get a squeeze that gets put on the middle and the lower class. If you cater to the middle and the lower class, you begin to see a squeeze on your business. You start to see revenue start to take a downturn. You start to feel or hear from clients that, listen, unfortunately, your service is not a priority, especially when I'm juggling my expenses, trying to, pay my bills, my essentials, my mortgage or my rent, my car payment, my food, my utilities. There's just not enough money that's left over for me to be doing what people might consider non-essential things. And so they're communicating this to you. And of course, that's super frustrating, right? You might feel that squeeze, feel that pinch. We have been giving advice that, listen, if you want to be able to survive an economic downturn, what you need to do is you need to move up market.
Right.
You need to move into a market where those people aren't, first of all, feeling that quite as much. Now, everybody's feeling it. So I want to make sure before I start getting tons of comments, hey, man, everybody's feeling it. But when you make seven figures and you are feeling a little bit of a squeeze, you still don't have to get rid of your wellness therapies, your massages. You don't have to stop getting cosmetic interventions. You don't have to go to get your hair done less often. You don't have to make those types of decisions. Yes, you still feel an economic pinch, but you don't have to make critical decisions relative to what you're spending on. And so we encourage people to move up market, but then this is the difficult thing. A lot of people can't move up market because they're stuck holding their current clientele.
Yes.
Right? So they're like, oh, but I'm doing this, so it's difficult for me to move up market. And so I thought I would talk about kind of what that means, what that looks like. And maybe you could give us some of your mindset guidance on how to overcome mental hurdles to making that jump. I also want to point out to people that this implies a lot of things. It's not just your clients. Making a move up market might mean reconditioning your brick and mortar space. It might mean touching up your website. It might mean up leveling your service. That might mean bringing on new people. That might mean making new hires. Maybe the current business model that you have was designed to cater to a certain market, and you're realizing I need to make a shift. I need to move up market, but I'm stuck because I'm really attached, and I think that's the word. I'm attached to my current business model, my current team, my current way of doing things, and my current clients, and that's stopping me from making the move.
I actually don't even know if it's attachment. I think that there's two probably mindsets that stop people from doing that. One of them is just straight fear. Fear that if they let go of the current business model that they're in and let go of the way that they're servicing their current clients, they feel like the whole thing will collapse.
Right.
Like
Well,
they
it
feel
will.
like, yeah.
But that's the problem, right? You have to
but-
collapse this to get to that.
Well, and that's the secondary, I think the secondary mindset that stops people is their inability to see the next logical step. So they kind of go hand in hand, but the reality of it is the fear stops them from seeing the next logical step, right? Or actually trying to identify it or trying to make a plan to go after it. And so the first thing that you need to do is figure out, like, where are you trying to go and what's the vision that you hold for yourself, for your business, and for your life. And one of the questions I've been asking clients and a lot of people lately is you need to assess, is my fear stronger than my vision? And if my fear of letting go of this is stronger than my vision of moving forward, then maybe it's not the right vision for you. That's the first thing you need to look at.
Well, let's talk about that then. In the vision world, I think that is difficult, especially if somebody finds themselves in a space of survival,
Sure,
right? So if
absolutely.
you feel like, hey, things are getting tough for me, I need to, I mean, and listen, this is just human nature, right? The first thing you think, things are tough, I need to cut back. Um, I was talking to a financial strategist and they were like, listen, think about it this way. What if through the financial crisis, what if you could double your revenue, but triple your profits? What would be the route to that? And so that means that, let's say that hypothetically you make $1 million in revenue. That means that you want, and let's say that you keep half of it. So you have $500,000 in profit. That means that on the next $1 million, right? So I want to get to 2 million, and I on the next million, I don't want to have just a $500,000 profit. I want to have a $750,000,
Right.
$800,000 profit. And what that means, though, is that necessarily the route to the next million is wrapped up in expenditures. And the goal here is that on my next set of expenditures, I need to get a 3-to-1 ROI, whereas in the previous, I was getting a 2-to-1 ROI.
Correct.
And so the key, though, that people miss is that the motor that drives this, the gas that drives this, the impetus here is actually the expenditure. I need to find new expenditures. And so this is the trick that I hope that everybody would take home on this first, point of discussion, is that in order to weather the storm, you have to find new expenses. Now, that might be human resource. That might mean marketing dollars. That might mean reconditioning your physical space. But I
Might
need
be
to find new,
reinvesting in your
new
current
expenses.
client base. Yeah.
But what happens is typically when we enter survival mode, the first thing that we think is I need to cut expenses.
Well, isn't that funny too? Like when you talk about survival mode, like if you were actually like lost somewhere deep in the woods and you didn't know how to get out and you were running out of food and water, the first thing you would do is you would figure out how to move forward to find your way out. You
Well,
wouldn't be
also
like,
I'd want more food and water.
and you
I
want more food and
wouldn't
water.
I
You
wouldn't
wouldn't be
say
like,
I'm going to eat less.
I'm gonna cut back and I'm gonna stop and I'm just gonna stay here in the hopes that somebody finds me. You're like, what can I do that's new? I'm gonna move into uncharted territory because I recognize that my future self will be impacted if I don't make those moves. So the question is when you're in a place where you're feeling fearful and you don't understand the next logical step, do you even understand how your future self will be impacted if you stop, if you cut back, if you don't move?
Well, that
Like,
would be like
I think
finding
there's a
somebody in the
disconnect.
forest. We find them, they're dead, but they have 4 bottles of water,
Yeah.
2 sandwiches, and 3 bags of chips.
And they were like, I'm
And
holding
yes,
out
but what we didn't
until
know is that they were like, I probably shouldn't eat my food because
just
I'm
in
lost
case. Yeah.
and I'm in survival mode. And so what I'll do is I'll just not eat, in hopes that by not eating, I'll be able to preserve this food that I have. And then you die with the food, right? If
No,
you have a business,
you actually feed
you feed
yourself
yourself
enough
so that you can
so that you
walk,
can push through.
so that you can get
Yes.
out, so that you have
Yes.
the energy. It's the fuel
Right.
that drives you. Expenses in business. Expenses are the reason that you have expenses are to create revenue.
Yes.
The reason why expenses exist is to create revenue. If you understood that, then you would say, all right, if I need more revenue, interestingly, I need more expenses. Now, not dumb expenses. I need more better expenses.
More better.
More better expenses will drive revenue. And so I'm looking for, in an economic downturn, I start to heighten my awareness to expenses that will produce a better ROI than what I had before. So this is interesting. What if I have a team member, let's say that works in sales, and I can eliminate that position, but I can liberate some expenditure money that I can then reallocate into another resource. Now, what if I could reallocate that same expense because I had a human resource that was living fat on the hog, and I realized that I could get 2 salespeople for the same price,
Sure.
same amount that I had before. I can potentially double my sales. You see, so but I have to spend the money. I don't cut the money. I cut the money to get the money. Then I spend the money, and I could potentially have 2 salespeople. Why? Because things are tough. So I might be able to hire them in at a lower price and
Right.
get double the output. So now I could right there with the same money have doubled my revenue with the same expenditure.
Right. So in survival mode, you're not starving yourself. You're actually finding ways to feed yourself differently. Right.
Right,
I mean,
right.
and that's what we're talking about. So you
got-
got to
you
go.
gotta
You
eat.
got to get over the fear. You got to eat.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's talk about then. So that's survival mode. Then what about vision? Let's say that I'm not in survival mode. Let's say that I'm doing well. But I am aware, and I want to speak to those people. Like, okay, a lot of people are like, but I'm not in survival mode.
Right.
I'm doing really well. I am conscious, though, of an economic downturn. You were talking about, though, a lot of these people don't have a vision. My theory is they don't have a vision because they're coming out of a period of time that everything was so good. You didn't
Or
really need a vision.
or they have a vision that's not truly in alignment with where they're trying to go. It's somebody else's version of their vision.
What does that mean?
Like, so for instance, like a lot of people just they're conditioned to say, I want to do X amount of dollars in my business, or I want to be able to, exit out of my business and work from my home. But that's because that's like what's cool right now, but it's not necessarily what they truly, truly desire, right? And so a lot of times people attach to an idea of what they have been told is the equivalent of success, and they're aggressively pursuing that, but it may not be truly what they're drawn towards or what fills them up.
So how do
And
they
we
figure
see
that out? How do
people,
you know what you're drawn towards? Because that's true. A lot of times it's easy to see things on the internet. People are flashing their cars and their watches and their
and it may not
planes
be
and their
you, it may not be
trips.
what you want.
And yeah, and there was a long time that this laptop lifestyle, right? That was
Right.
what was, promoted all over the place. But if I find myself caught up in other people's dreams, how do I get myself out? How would I know what I want?
I think it literally begins with asking yourself that question, like those questions of what do I want more of in my life? And what do I want less of? What am I considering letting go of? And like I always tell people, when you ask yourself that, you need to make sure that the very thing that first thing that comes up for you is the thing that you listen to, because usually that's the thing where you go, ooh, no, no, oh, I can't have that. I don't want that. It's the thing you talk yourself out of. That's what you truly desire, but for some reason felt like or been told that you have to push that down. And so it may actually be just a reassessment of what you truly want more of in your life, and ask yourself, is my vision actually going to provide that for me? And if it's not, then we need to change the vision. The other thing is this is really easy. If you've been holding on to a vision for your life for a really long time, and you feel lots of resistance comes in many ways. You could be very successful and still have resistance in your life, in your ability to achieve certain things. If you're feeling that, then maybe that's just an indicator that you're not actually going after something that you're in alignment with. Because when you're in alignment with things are typically easy and they flow pretty well.
That is true. To use the word resistance, I think that resistance is good. Tension is good.
Tension, but not.
I think of like a violin or a guitar. It's the tension on the string that produces the right sound. So when we're tuning the guitar, what we're doing is we're adjusting the tension on each string. But like you said, when all of the tension is right, it flows. It's harmonious.
Right.
But it's not like there's floppy. It's not like life is like tensionless.
When I guess we describe
It's
where
harmonious.
it's a
Everything flows because it's in
terminology
harmony.
though.
Yeah, but I
Because
also think that
resistance is a pushback.
right.
Tension is not.
Got it. So you want to eliminate the resistance, but tension is good
Push.
because you want to create tension in all of the elements of your life to a place where it becomes harmonious. Tension is good,
Yes.
but the resistance, yeah. So like if but even then, a little resistance is good because you put a little resin on the bow, right? Because it's the resistance as the bow goes across the string that produces the sound, but not resistance to what you are pursuing. Let's give people a little bonus. One of the things then that I see, let's say that maybe so far we haven't hit that nerve for our listeners. A lot of times people are like, first of all, Lacey, I'm not in survival mode. Second of all, I think I do have a fairly good idea of my
Where I'm
vision. I
trying
know
to
what I'm
go.
trying to go. Number three, bonus. But oftentimes what I see is maybe you're in a relationship and your significant other is not on the same page. So maybe I have a vision like, yeah, I want to live in the Cayman Islands on a boat, but you are like, wait a minute, that's not what we're doing. I'm trying to do something completely different. I'd love to live on a 10-acre farm with a white picket fence with horses. I mean, that's two radically different things.
Right.
How do we get couples to get on the same page with
I mean,
vision?
that's also a lack of alignment, which creates
Resistance.
resistance, right? That's a whole nother form of resistance. And like we teach this all the time, you can individually hold two visions and come together and figure out how to achieve them both, right? Oftentimes the timeline is just shifted. You're not going to get them both at the same time, but there's still the ability, if you want to go in the Cayman Islands and I want to go to Antarctica, like we can figure out how to live in both places, but maybe we have to go where you want to go first or where I want to go first. And then once we get that, we aggressively pursue your vision, right? And so it's just a matter of coming together and having conversations about what do you truly want more of in your life, and how can we hold those two visions and get them together.
And timing is everything. I talk a
Timing is
lot
everything.
with people about runway. I think that what people don't realize is, in order to be classified as an international airport, you need to have a certain length of runway. A 747, these larger planes, they require a larger runway to get off the ground. You
Right.
have to roll down the runway for a long time. I see a lot of people. Let's take that example. You want to live in the Cayman Islands and in Antarctica. Well, that's
Very
that's
different.
that's quite a lot. That's quite a long runway too, right? So there's a runway to the first step, and then there's further runway to the next step. And I think that sometimes people misjudge runway.
Yeah,
So,
fair.
if you have a 747 and you have a very short runway, your plane's not going to get up to speed. You're not going to get off the ground, and you're going to run the plane right off the runway. I see that happen with a lot of people as well because they miscalculate runway on the vision.
Right.
And this then leads to, delayed gratification. You're going down the runway. If the plane's not up to speed, you can't pull the plane up. It doesn't have enough speed and velocity to create the lift to get it off the ground. The same thing in your business or your life. You sometimes have these visions, but you haven't created enough velocity. You're not moving fast enough. You just decided this a week ago, and then bang, you're trying to move to Cayman Islands. I think that when you misjudge runway, that causes you to skid off the runway. And then that's when people, write in or comment below here, like, you guys are a bunch of idiots. I took your advice and it didn't work. The last thing, though, that I find very interesting that I want to address, and you're far more of an expert in this realm than I am, but I received some comments, this past weekend. We celebrated the 50th anniversary of Sherman College of Chiropractic. We had a big homecoming event, and I provided a keynote where I was talking about giving. And I was talking about how, cliche, but the hole that you give through is the hole that you receive through. And a lot of
Sure.
people are trying to receive through this massive, like they have high expectations of receiving, but they give through a pinhole, right? So they have a pinhole giving, and then they have pinhole receiving, and they scratch their heads.
Right.
And what's weird about this is, though, this is slightly esoteric because I was like, well, you just have to test the rules of the universe. There's natural cycles and laws, right? So, there's rain, especially if you're a golfer. Nobody loves rain, but the rain is what makes the golf course green,
Right.
right? And so you have to have the rain. You give, you take time off away from the course. You give. It's not the best for you in order for you to receive, but to the extent that you're willing to be patient in your giving is the same product that you're able to receive. So if you're patient, you have a nice green, lush, nicely manicured golf course. So I was asking the people in attendance, 800 people in attendance, to test this law of nature and to increase their giving, and specifically to the college. And I received 48 hours later. 48 hours later, I received a note from a young man who had gone through some difficulty with his health, and because of his health issues, had to temporarily suspend his ability to serve. So his business was suspended
Sure.
for a period of time. Had a medical intervention, a surgery, and so he was unable to provide services. He had said that in my talk, he felt moved to give. He wanted to give, but the hard thing is, right? You can't get blood from or what is it? You can't get
Blood from a turnip.
blood from a
Can't squeeze blood from a turnip.
can't squeeze blood from a turn. Is that right, James? Whatever. I thought it was a rock.
Can't
Anyways,
squeeze
you
blood
can't
from
give.
a
You
rock.
can't.
I think mine
You
sounds
can't give
a
what
little
you
bit
don't
more
have.
odd.
You can't give what you don't have, right? And so, um, he's like, but I wanted to give. I wanted to do something, and what happened is, like, he had the spirit and disposition that he wanted to give me. He's just
Sure.
like, I just didn't have. Someone else, ironically, had offered. This is what a weird concept, like, right? In my expression of, I think you should give. Another person in the audience was like, I'm already giving and I want to give more, but I could just give more to the institution, but here's what I want to do. So they came to me and they said, I want to give on behalf of other people who want to give, but for whatever reason cannot.
Right.
I was like, wow, what an amazing concept. So this individual, it was kind of a matched donation, but it was small. Like if you give 500, I'll give 500,
Right.
kind of thing. So that lowered the bar of the entry, and so the first gentleman was able to get into the giving game. So that brings us to the message.
Okay.
He wrote to me and he said, what's funny is that was on, my talk was given on a Thursday.
Sure.
He decided to pull the trigger on Friday. On Monday, he received 12 phone calls from clients who were previously clients but suspended their ability to receive the service because of the surgery and were inquiring about how can they get going again. In addition to that, 2 additional brand new people called. There's 14 phone calls
yeah.
from clients on a Monday after this person tested the universe. I think that part of this too, like what we're talking about, how do you let go, right? I think that you have to understand that there's universal laws. Like how do you make it not rain? You don't. How do you let go? You just, that the rain comes and it provides the spring flowers,
Sure.
right? April showers bring May flowers. And so you also know that you have to let go of this branch in order to get to the next one. Now, either there's laws of the universe and you're being protected at all times and everything is going to work out, or it's not. But here's what I do know is if you can't let go of that first branch, you cannot physically, it's impossible for you to move on to the other branch. And that's
Right.
what has people stuck.
Yeah, I agree.
So I hope that people will be encouraged. Test the laws of the universe. Here's what I also know. If you don't have another branch to grab onto and you just let go of your current branch, you fall. You're going to hit the ground, right? So you've got to get a little momentum, runway, and you need a little tension, that branch, and you've got to get going, and then you've got to let go at some point so that you can jump over and grab that other branch.
Let go of the
But
fear
what you're saying,
and recognize that the next logical step is the branch in front of you.
and I also have to pick the branch that I'm going
Yeah.
to. So I can just like swing out
Yep.
and not know. You have to have vision of where I'm trying to go so that I can have enough runway to get there. That's none of your business short. Anything else to add?
Nope.
All right, everybody. That's it for this week. Next week, we're going to have an amazing interview. We always say that we're going to try and top this week. That's not going to be hard because it was just you and I. Wait till you see who are rolling out. Next week, we're going to have an amazing interview that's going to edify each and every one of you. And then we're going to continue on our interview rhythm, but we're going to sprinkle in these shorts. If you have a topic that you would like us to tackle, feel free to reach out. Send me an email at Shawn@blackdiamondclub.com. Tell us what you'd like to hear more of here on the None of Your Business podcast, and we'll turn it into a None of Your Business short. We'll be back again next week with a brand new edition of the None of Your Business podcast.